Recording in
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Dave. How's it going?
Hey, Aurora. One of our past radical truth tellers, Aurora Harris, one of the co-founders of We the People of Detroit. Very dope poet. So you all welcome to our, get my shirt right, but welcome to our July Radical Truth Teller Award. I'm Dr. Dave Ragland. I'm one of the co-executive directors of the Truth Telling Project. Hi, everyone. I think I was talking and then I got muted, but welcome. I'm one of the co-executive directors of the Truth Telling Project. And I want to just share a little bit before we get started about what this event is and why we started it. So the Truth Telling Project began in 2014 after the murder of Mike Brown Jr. And we really began as a altar space to provide testimony. We started as a quasi-truth and reconciliation commission. And we worked on hearing testimony around people who have experienced police violence or either intimately or through family or some other type of way. And one of the things that we realized as we were working with activists, particularly in Ferguson, is activists were not being supported. Many folks came out into the streets in Ferguson really because they had it up to here with police violence. It was just unsustainable for people, for anybody, for our society, and just a fundamental violation of how we saw this country's principles or stated principles versus action. And during the Ferguson protest, there was just lots of regular people who were in the streets protesting, creating actions, pushing for policy, doing all kinds of really important, necessary truth-telling and policy work and organizing. And these people weren't paid organizers. They weren't getting paid, and they needed ways to sustain themselves. And so we began a project called Support an Activist, where each month we raised money for activists. We raised money for folks like Mama Cat, Kathy Daniels, who's well known around the country for her activism. We raised money for Congresswoman Cori Bush, who's the current Congresswoman. We raised money for so many different activists in the streets. And then maybe about 2 years ago, we changed the award to the Radical Truth Teller Award, especially because many of our own organizing shifted, and we thought it was really important to award and honor people who have been spending their time telling the truth. And we know that in this society, telling the truth comes with so many consequences. And we thought it was important and urgent to support and give support and connection and our connections to activists who are doing that. And so we were able to come up with a nice amount of funding to support activists. And then we also, with an award, and then we also encourage the folks who are on the calls to support the activists. In addition to on our social media, we support the Activist of the Month for the entire month. And, you know, today I'm just really honored to be here with Ty Amri, who I've known for a while as a friend through Mia Gonzalez, who works with us and supports our social media. And it's just been a pleasure seeing Amri do this activism through social media. And I'm so excited to finally get to hear more about your work and see you in person. But before we start, I just want to begin by encouraging people to add their pronouns and to also name in the chat or after your pronouns the Indigenous people whose land you're currently on. And we began all of our programming in this way because we think that that naming and having land acknowledgements is more than just a thing that we do. We think that and believe that is a prayer that seeds our intentions with action around decolonizing the place where we are, around acknowledging that this land is stolen, and that Black and Indigenous blood is mixed in this land and transform this land. And in this moment now, we are suffering from the colonization and theft of land through catastrophic climate change. So our prayer is to return land, to re-indigenize ourselves and the land that we are on, and to give back land. So I'd like to ask us to just breathe for a moment with these intentions. And I want to honor our many ancestors who have gotten us to this moment, to this place. Our ancestors support and guide us in this work. We are building upon what they laid the foundation for. Again, I want to welcome you all, acknowledging Aurora Harris, one of our past Radical Truth Tellers, and our staff and team members who are on the call. And I want to introduce Josh, one of our organizing operations organizer, who's going to share a little bit, and then we're going to hear from Mia and then Ty Amri. Welcome, everyone. So glad that you're here.
Thanks, Dave. I want to welcome and thank everyone who showed up tonight. So good to see all your faces. Thank you. So good to see you, Aurora, once again. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. I just want to take a brief moment to share with you some of our social media. We want to encourage people to share their experiences with the larger your larger followings and friend groups and networks, to interact with people, talk about things, experiences you've had. We have some hashtags we like to use. I'm going to drop all of our social media into the chat right now, so you can find it on different platforms, as well as dropping the hashtags that we'd like you to use, particularly one for today, July Recipient Teller. Though, as this is going to be recorded and shared for the months to come, we also encourage people to use these links as we go into next month and next year, and keep going and trying to spread this message. So if you want to just grab it in the chat, it's all there. And we just want to thank you all again for coming tonight and interacting with us and staying connected with us. And I'll pass it now to Mia.
Hello, everybody. This is Mia Gonzalez. I manage the social media with Joss and Dave and everybody else with the Truth Telling Project and the grassroots operations. But I'm here to introduce Amri. He is basically a brother to me and family. And I just want to take a moment. His bio is very impressive. Aura, I think you're going to be really impressed being a poet. He is a poet as well. So Amri, you can definitely correct me, but I'm going to read a little bit. He is from South Jersey. He has hilarious stories from there, right outside of Philly. He is in Osage, Konza in Lawrence, Kansas. He is also a co-founder of Black, which is Black Literature and Arts Collective of Kansas. And he is also the chief editor, he was the chief editor of Tendril. It was Naropa University's Journal on Diversity, which was a self-published chapbook of ancient writings of the Dark Prophet, the Undisciplined Mystic. He has also published work in Spirit Rising, Young Quaker Voices, edited by Angelina Conti and Justice Call, Sermons of Welcome and Affirmation, edited by Phil Snyder. His most recent book is Beautiful Ashe, Memoirs of a Sweetback Boy and Other Poems. It deals with African spirituality, toxic masculinity, and justice movements. And Amri, I hope you put a link that everybody can buy it because it's amazing. And currently Amri is working on integrating earth justice, Pan-African ideology, and queer theology, which sounds like no easy feat at all, with his work with the training of youth activists. And he also just got back from Africa. So I'm really excited to hear about that journey. So I'm now going to hand on the microphone to Amri.
Bye, everybody. Welcome in the tree language of the Ashanti of Ghana. I am Amri. Thank you, Mia, for that awesome introduction. So I should say, first of all, thanks for the dropping of naming of the indigenous lands. I saw that there was someone named Max on here who's from Creek Muskogee land in Atlanta, which is where my people are from on my mother's side. And I know we have some Seminole Creek ancestry there. And being from South Jersey, that's where I was born. So that's the land of the Lenape people. So I just want to acknowledge those people as well. So again, my name is Amri. You can see also in parentheses there's Kojo Boama, which recently was, and I went through a naming ceremony in a recent trip to Ghana. And I went to the Ashanti people in the Kumasi region who helped me recover that name, that Ashanti name for myself. So I loved hearing the different parts of myself that I was integrating when I was thinking about what can I say about myself. I would label myself as a father, as an educator, um, as and as a spiritual artivist. Um, and so I just want to say a little bit about what that means to me. And a lot of my journey, from where I've been to where I am now, kind of begins in the spirit. So you may have heard um, references to friends. So I grew up as a Quaker, um, and both of my parents attended Quaker meeting um, in Maine, upstate New York, at Poughkeepsie, right outside New York City, and in the Philadelphia area. And Philadelphia is the main region that I grew up as a friend or as a Quaker. But somewhere in high school, I had a rebellious phase, and I became a conservative Christian. Um, and so something about being in that world really showed me a lot, helped me learn a lot about perspectives that are other, that are different from my own. And one thing that I learned was that in that world, there was very little opportunity to hear anything that might be contrary to what your pastor was teaching you. You know, so I wasn't. I asked my parents to send me to a Christian high school where they taught me, not to read anything that was secular, and so I grew up, with a perspective that was like, I have this view on homosexuality and this view on abortion, and I never listened to anyone who had a view outside of that one. Okay, so and it wasn't until I went to college I started taking courses. Courses in particular, I took a couple courses in African American studies, and I started to learn about the history of colonization in Africa, and I realized how culpable the church was in that. It was kind of it was an awakening for me, and it helped me to see, oh, this is why I wasn't supposed to hear these perspectives, because it was going to affect my worldview. And eventually I knew that I couldn't have this closed worldview. I had to open it up if I wanted to progress as a human being, if I wanted to be the light that I was trying to be in the world at that time. I knew that I had to love in the way that I thought Jesus was loving, unconditionally not judging, being non-judgmental. And so I began to seek another way that was different from what I had been taught in the church, and began to seek in Buddhism in particular, which led me to Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. Came all the way from South Jersey, Philly to Boulder, Colorado, which, if you've ever been there, is like the whitest place that any Jersey boy has ever seen. So I was not prepared when I got there. But when I got there, I did take some courses by an amazing professor named Sudarshan Kapoor. And Sudarshan to me was like, I say he's the person who activated me, because I was taking courses on Dr. King and Howard Thurman, on Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, and Malcolm X. And he came from India to study the Black Liberation Movement, and then he came to teach the Black Liberation Movement, and then he taught us students. He would say, if you want something to change, you have to be the ones to change it. That's how I began to write poetry for the purpose of social transformation. And I began to be the editor of the diversity journal at school, and to really push for the diversification of curriculum. Like, why am I in a class on feminism, and the last feminist that we study in our syllabus is bell hooks? Like, why is she the only feminist of color. Why is she the last feminist of color? Like, you know, I was I was really like adamant about this, and what we came to is, well, whoever's teaching the curriculum gets to decide the curriculum, and if they don't have any cultural competence, then how are they going to teach anything that is culturally relevant? And so we began to push that staff were trained on diversity, and we brought in diversity trainers. We had a full-time staff whose purpose was to support students of color in particular, and really work to change the face of the university. And that was, a lot of that had to do with my teacher, Sudarshan Kapoor, teaching me that it was my role as a student was to create change, shake things up. And after university, I began to work with young people, in particular in after school programming, where I had a lot more freedom than I currently do in the classroom to create curriculum. I began working in the inner city of Philadelphia with some young people and trying to teach them strategies for peacemaking, for creating peaceful communities through a Quaker curriculum called Help Increase the Peace Program. And this was really where I found my calling, where I found that I was experiencing a passion that I hadn't previously experienced in any other positions before. And I really felt like this was my calling, was to be able to work and facilitate peace. And through that work, which was actually as an internship with Pendle Hill, which is a Quaker study and retreat center right outside of Philly, I decided to go to seminary. And I knew that I couldn't go to a seminary that was anything like the theology of my high school. So I looked for a seminary that was going to be about peace and justice for all people, no matter their orientation or their race. And I decided to go to Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, which was very radical, and like right off the bat was like, we are teaching queer theology. And I learned a lot about queer theology while I was there. I also learned about the East Bay, Berkeley, and Oakland divide, and felt like, while I like learning, I also like being with the people, with my people, and decided to go to leave seminary and start working in the church. And I chose a very poor, small, diverse church in Oakland, where I was pastoring, and this happened to be during the Occupy movement. So a lot of my work was trying to get my parishioners out of the church and to occupy Oakland, to the General Assemblies. And I did my best in that regard. But it was a beautiful time. And, I think one of the things that I loved the most about that is that I had a co-pastor named Reverend Shonda Jha, who I think Mia has met a few times. And Shonda and I, one thing that we loved doing was we loved going out into the community and like holding ceremony around places of injustice. So, let's go down to a place where there was a raid by the police on a homeless encampment. Let's go to this place where a young person was shot by the police on this corner. Let's hold space right here. And so that was really where I learned a theology of the streets. But eventually I came to feel like being in the church was still feeling too close to me, even though I was working as a social justice pastor. I had this part my identity that wasn't being recognized, and it was the African identity. And I began to feel a stronger call to learn more about traditional African spirituality. And so I started to feel like, I can't really call myself a Christian, because I don't just pray to Jesus. I don't just pray to God. I believe in many gods, and I actually feel more of an affinity towards the African deities of my ancestors, and in particular, the tradition of Ifa was really what was calling to me. Um, and and I and at this point in my life, I've come to believe that a lot of what I've been seeking is what has been lost through the Middle Passage to me, what was stripped from me, and from my ancestors, the ability to understand and practice in the way that my ancestors understood and practice. And I began to work with Iyas and Babalaos in the Ifa tradition, who understood the divinity of all people. So, in all spiritual traditions, there's going to be people who are purists, or who may believe that it's evil to be gay, it's evil to be trans, and that was never going to be my path. So I found a community and that understands that we are all divine, and we have all been given a divine path, no matter who we love or what we look like. And so that is currently the tradition that I find myself in identifying with most strongly, is the Ifa tradition. And it informs so much of the work I do, because in the Ifa tradition, all of everything has an energy, has nashe. So the river is sentient. So because the river is sentient, I can't throw my trash in the river. And when I see trash in the river, I recognize the river as something that is divine, and I have to intervene. That is, and my intervening is my spiritual work. So there's not a separation between environmentalism and spiritualism for me. And one common thread through all of this has been my poetry. And I said, a little bit about how I've tried to write poetry that would change people's hearts. That's a big reason why I write poetry. But another reason why I write poetry, why I'm a poet, is because this work breaks my heart all the time. And the only way that I can walk in this work and still function as a human being, and still be a dad, and still be a husband, and still be a teacher, is that I need that pen and that paper to write it down, to get it out of me, so that I can function in the world. So in a lot of ways, it's my therapy, even as it's a prayer at the same time. And so, Mia was saying she wants to hear about Africa, right? So, and you can also see Africa too. I'm wearing this shirt. I have this shirt made in Ghana by a tailor. And this is like I don't usually wear stuff like this. Like, Mia will tell you, I like earth tones. But I was kind of being pressed for, like, you need to buy a cloth like right now, or else this salesperson is going to make you buy everything in the store. So I was like, all right, that one, fine, I'll take that one. And but these colors feel very Ghanaian to me. Like, there were so many people walking around with colors like this that I wouldn't stand out at all walking through Accra. But but the other day I was hanging out with some friends. I was trying to tell them about Ghana, and one of my friends said, "Hey, did you go to church while you were there?" And I was like, yes and no. The yes is that I went to slave castles. I went to slave dungeons where I went to 3 of them on the coast of Ghana. And in every slave castle that I went to, there was a church. And in one in particular, the church was above a dungeon. And when you walk out the door of the church, there was a hole that you could look into the dungeon and see stolen Africans. And that sight will never leave me. And it's like, and it wasn't even the most horrific thing I saw. It was like pretty far down the list of horrific things I witnessed in that slave castle. And I, to the point where I can't talk about it. I can't, I don't know, I'll break down if I talk about some of the things I saw, but I can write about it. I can write it in a poem and I can share that poem. That's what I can do. And I know that if I didn't write it in a poem, I might never share it. I might never be able to share it. That's the way I can share some of the most horrific things that I've seen and experienced in my life. So yeah, I don't know what my time's like right now, but that's a weird place to end. But I feel like I want to leave time for other things too.
Hi, Amri. Thank you for sharing that. I do want, if you have an opportunity to share a piece from your poetry, one, it's great for us to clip and put on social media, but I think everyone here needs to hear a little bit if you would like to, no pressure.
Yeah. I don't know, Mia, what do you think? Should I share something from Ghana or something from beautiful Ashe?
Well, let's do beautiful Ashe.
Okay. Beautiful Ashe. Copy over here. I can share this. This is in honor of July 4th. I wrote a poem a couple years back, around a time when people were talking a lot about the detention centers along the border, and I was just hearing about children being it was right around COVID, children who just were living in squalor in these detention centers, and thinking about that in contrast to the Independence Day of July 4th. I wrote this flag of distress, or what to a migrant child is July 4th. Mother, forgive us when we know exactly what we do. Take your darker children and lock them in dungeons of greed. Make mourners of their mothers, drown their fathers in rivers of freedom. Force 10-year-olds to raise babies and deny them methods to heal. When you look at the trail that we've walked, awaken to the pain we have wrought. The only logical solution is to repair legacies of despair. but there's a crown that sits on oppression, opium dens for hatred to incubate, soldiers manufacturing consent, and stars that blind with blockbusters. So what to an imprisoned migrant child is the 4th of July? It's not the rocket's red glare. It's the ripping of the sinews of the heart torn from mama. Not the flag of freedom, but the chain-linked fence, the toilet bowl drinking fountain. Not the rainbowed produce aisle, but the spoiled bologna. Not a day to spend with loved ones, but straw on a desert floor. We don't need another celebration. We need the cold shock of sobriety. Don't need to watch another show. Need to hear influenza cries for family. Don't need to read POTUS tweets. Need to pay the sins of our forefathers. Don't need infighting. Need solutions already. And when we feel that our problems are the worst, we need to remember that there's a child who followed a dream where they saw their father drowned, where they can't soothe their mother's tears, and where men with guns keep them whispering, "Mother, forgive us."
Thank you. Does anyone have any, I know Dave, there's Dave, he's connecting again. Does anyone have any questions? Dave, you're not on mute, just so you know.
I mean, I have a question, but I'm just trying to be nice and wait.
I do have a question. One is just a very quick question. One's a follow-up question. So the first question is, where in Jersey are you from? Because my family's actually from South Jersey, so I'm curious, like if you're like in the same area. We're from like Gloucester Township area. Where you
Yeah.
are?
Well, if you're from South Jersey, then you probably don't think I'm South Jersey. I'm from Burlington County, so just north of
Okay,
Camden,
all right, yeah.
Willingboro. Yeah.
Oh yeah, my college roommate was from Willingboro.
Yeah. Yep. We like to pretend that Boys to Men came from Willingboro, but I know they didn't. But that's the fable. Carl Lewis is from Willingboro. There you go.
That's dope though. I feel like there's a lot of things we talked about today that really resonate with my experience, particularly like talking about like I had a very similar trajectory with my spiritual and political development coming from like a different like a very similar like base point, and then also moving like through Christianity. Even though I still consider myself larger Christian, I've been looking more into African spiritualism and to the more traditional like ways of faith. So I really like appreciate you like expounding on that, because that like really resonates with me personally. Like that's where I'm at like right now. And one thing you also talked about that I thought was interesting was you mentioned Occupy, which I feel like a lot of people of like the generation right before mine, which I don't know if you consider yourself what generation you situate yourself, but I definitely feel like that's a really seminal moment for a lot of people. And you said like there's a time where you were trying to kind of connect that to your spiritual development. And I'm curious, like both from a political standpoint, what the effects that had on you and like what lessons you took from that, and also like what your experience was like if at all, did that influence that experience influence your spiritual development?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, that's an awesome question. I feel like it affected me so much because I mean, Occupy Oakland was massive. It was so huge, and it like, you know, there's so much disillusionment. But I remember at some point I was like, is this it? Like, is this revolution? Is this like the end point? I'm trying to figure out what's the next, right? And somehow I came across that's how I found Grace Lee Boss. I came across a video by Grace, and she was like just talking about how the point is not critical mass, it's critical connection. I was like, oh, yeah, I've been in critical mass, but those critical connections, I didn't really, I did. There were a couple places where I was finding critical connection, and a lot of them were spiritual. Like there was an interfaith occupied tent, and that was like, I was like, oh, these people are the people that I need to be down with, because I'm not like I can say fuck God, and I can get down with being like irreverent, but at the end of the day, I'm still a spiritual person, so I can't really, like, I'm not really like the atheist anarchist. I can get down anarchy and I get down atheism, but it's not actually who I am. Like I'm moving from spirit. So so it was like after Occupy, I started to be like, no, I'm trying to find those critical connections. Like I'll march, but it's not the point. The point used to be to me like, how many people can we get together? And then it was like, how deep can we get together? That's what I want. Like that's what I started to look for. Like, and like how long can we sustain what we're doing? Like, because I can only march for so long. I only get tear gas so long. Like, but I can like cook a meal. I have a potluck. I can do that every day, So I was looking for like, how do we build? And I just was like looking on a whole other level. And I started studying with Grace Lee Boggs at that time too. She became my guru. My dad would call her my guru. Like I would come out to see her all the time and just learn at her feet. And so that was like, yeah, that changed my trajectory quite a bit. So that when Black Lives Matter came across, I was like, yeah, let's march, but I don't want to stop. I'm not going to stop after everybody in the city's marching. Like, that's not the point to me. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Yeah, that's like definitely a thing that's been like shown to be true. Like that idea of critical connection over critical mass, like that is the thing that's been evident. Like I wish Luke was on here. We talked a lot about the need to like build collectives of people that organize with each other and hold each other, like, in community together with each other and like make deep connections and deep roots. And because that's, as you say, that's what like literally builds us up.
Yeah.
Hi, Ty, this is Aurora. I just want to say really quickly, thanks for mentioning Grace. Because, I'm in Detroit and she is a wonderful person to learn from. And when we used to visit with her and have those critical questions and talks, she would say to us, well, that's a good question. What are you going to do about it? So, and that, got us here thinking, like you said, it's not always about joining a march or marching all the time, and I've been to, several hundreds in my lifetime, but there comes a point where you have to sit with people and try to build some type of mindset and exchange ideas to build what it is that you're fighting for. And, that's one of the things that, we've been doing here with my group, like We the People of Detroit, with the water crisis. We reacted by setting up water stations instead of like going to the streets first, because the people needed water. And the question that I have for you as a poet to poet, is do you write to process the work first, or do you process what it is that you're going to write about before you write about it?
Honestly, I think I process more because, like, you talk about like Mike Brown. or like Trayvon Martin, especially like young people being shot and killed like that. When I was in Oakland, I met the mother of Alan Bluford, and like that was just like, I don't know. After that experience, I was like, I can't, like when something like that happens, I'm like, the only way I can take this information in is if I know I have an hour or two afterwards that I can write about it, like that, because I've found that when I just take it in and I don't process it immediately, like it just sticks in there and it feels like poison, you know what I mean? And it just starts to burn at me, and I can't be present with my family, you know what I mean? I can't breathe, like literally, like you know what I mean? So I need that. I have to process it through my writing, or I can't function. So and it, I mean, and because I think because what I'm processing is socially relevant, then it also becomes a way of speaking to other people about issues. But really, it's like, for me, it's like how I can live.
Thank you.
Where I'm really enjoying this. Like, this has hit me in so many different ways. And I just want to pause for a moment. And Ty, Amri, if there's some place that you want people to donate, if you can drop that in your link in the chat right now. And I want to encourage people to support Ty Amri, because, you know, it is really hard to do this work, to continue and to be active, to speak the truth, to write this. Much of it is not paid at many levels of activism. And so we want to give our flowers to people while they're living. And not that this is a comparison, but just in Ferguson, we lost activists who died under mysterious situations. At least 6 activists who died under mysterious circumstances. And just so much trauma, even after George Floyd, and the things people went through, and the way support from your community surrounding you can give you strength. And so I want to encourage, did we get that in the chat yet? If folks can Venmo or PayPal Tamri right now. If you can do that right now, we would appreciate it. Whatever comes to you, if you can. And I have a question, and when you talk about spirituality, it often, you're one of the first people I heard, at least in this format, talk about your spirituality in this way. And I have a similar background of being really interested in religion and spirituality. And then at the beginning of COVID, there was, it felt like Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. And I don't know if you had a chance to read that, but the main character, Lauren Olamina, is basically not creating a new religion, but looking at a new kind of spirituality in a moment of disaster. What kind of spirituality do we need now for liberation? Right, in that time, it was God has changed. Everything changes, right? So if you know, and I consider that a battlefield religion, battlefield faith. How do you be out there with people in the moment? So what does a spirituality of liberation look like for you?
So I'm I'm wondering if you could still hear me. My earbuds just died right in the middle of Can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. Yeah, spirituality. I love Parable of the Sowers. Mia actually made me a compilation of it's slipping my mind right now, the name of the writings for some reason.
It's the same one that Dave mentioned, but yes, big fans over here.
Yeah, so spirituality, and you know, I feel like the thing that keeps coming up for me, especially after just coming back from Ghana, is reparations. I definitely believe in the necessity and like and that Black people deserve reparations, but and financial reparations is definitely a part of it. But for me, spiritual reparations are just as much a part of it. And so, like when I think about why did I go to Ghana, and to me that is reparations. Like to me, it's like they stole my ancestors' labor, but they stole my ancestors' religion. They stole our names. They stole our family members, and a lot of that is still there, you know. And it's like I went. I had help going to Ghana. My mother helped me, but it's like, but that's my family. So we spent our own money to go back and get some of that stuff back. And to me, reparations is like, no, I deserve to know what my Ashanti name would have been. Like, I deserve that. I deserve to know who my ancestors were. I deserve that. And I think that when I say I want reparations, I want that too. I want all of my people to be able to know that information, have that information. Like we all deserve that, and we are owed that. but that doesn't just have to do with Black people. When I think of spiritual reparations, I'm like, almost every single people on this continent have been severed from their ancestors, and so, and I think that's part of why I've been able to survive and do the work I have is because of my ancestors. I know that without I know that as a fact, on faith, on spirit, on God. I know my ancestors walk with me and guide me. And so when I think of what spirituality we need, I think we all need to do that, So my wife is of Irish ancestry, and when she sees me worshiping my ancestors and the African deities of my ancestors, then she's like, well, what about my ancestors? I'm like, that's it. That's what we need. We need to go back to our ancestry. Like, that's what I think is the survival tactic, is what's that lineage that we walk on, And of course, all of our ancestors are not all good. Yeah, you might have some slave. I tell this to my students. I don't know if I mentioned now, I'm a middle school teacher. But when I do my critical race theory on slavery, sometimes my students are like, well, I'm white. My ancestors were slave owners. I was like, guess what? So are mine. What are you gonna do about it? Like, that's part of what we're trying to reclaim here. That's what part of my work is to heal the ancestors who did fucked up shit, and then also bring the strength of those ancestors who survived to this place with me as well. So I think both of those things are needed.
This is extremely powerful. And hey, can Baba talk?
So yes, I'm so much like enjoying this conversation and just that notion that we all have a stake in reparations. That reparations for Black people is actually reparations for the whole country. And it is the acknowledgement. Hey,
I'm not facing the ants, Baba.
So I don't think I'm gonna be able to get a word in right now because I have a little one that's not cooperating.
But well, you're not cooperating to me because there's bugs and they might find me. And this is the only way to keep me safe from the bugs. So
Well, I'm gonna
other
see if
way?
Josh can close this out because I'm not gonna be able to get it to her.
I understand.
I'm like talking to you, Baba.
But I do want to just thank folks for coming out. And if folks want to just stay on for a few minutes more, it looks like the conversation is not completely done. But for folks who need to break off, we want to honor folks' time and end right at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. So thank you all for coming. Be sure to support Amri. This video will be on, hopefully edited it without the little munchkin voice again. So good to see everyone, and what a powerful conversation. And Amri, can we please have a conversation like offline as well later? It's so good to see everyone.
Yeah, just let me know where I can fit in. I'll be there.
Thank you again, Ty.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you, Amri. Love you, love you. Talk
Thank you,
soon.
Amri.
Soon.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Much love to you, dear one.
You too.